But if they don't ignite you to do better, little by little, they can intentionally or unintentionally lead you back to where you were before you started making moves toward better. When was the last time you audited your circle? Passion public service announcement. Passionate. Let me tell you something. So what is this Passion PSA Podcast? Who am I? Well, they call me Passion, short for passion, no last necessary. Why is there no last name necessary? Because the first name says it all. I am Passion and all that embodies. What do I do here? I give you the life coaching that you know you need, but don't enroll yourself in. When did I start? Actually, 2017. I'd leave a PSA on my Instagram regarding something I'd observed, and now we've evolved to this. Why do I do it? Why not? If even one person is able to take away one thing that changes their life, someone else's life, or changes the world for the better, then I've done what I was charged to do. So come on in, sit and listen for a while. There's something here for everyone at the Passion PSA Podcast. Greetings and salutations, my beloved passionates, newcomers, visitors, and guests. Welcome to season 5 of the Passion PSA Podcast, where I, Passion No Last Necessary, your Get You Right guru, issue a weekly public service announcement about whatever I have observed or was on my mind. I have previously introduced the episodes a little more softly, but it's season 5, so we're going to shake things up just a little bit, just for today, okay? The objective of this podcast is to give you some tools so you can do some self-work. Will you laugh? Sometimes, because I have a slick mouth. Will you feel attacked? Possibly, because the ego is the great defender and is always listening to respond, okay? Let's work past that. Let's take 20 to 30 minutes a week for a few months, listen to Inner and Overstand, ask ourselves if this applies to us, answer honestly, because 9.5 times out of 10 it does, and see how we can do better. If you are solely here to be amused and entertained, you want a good channel, but this is the wrong show. I have several other shows for that. Okay? Don't come here looking for ways to fix everybody else. You know 10 people that need to see or hear this episode? I bet you do, and guess what? You are 1 through 7 on that list. Here she go already. She didn't even give him a chance. I'm just letting them know the energy. We all have work to do, myself included, so let's do it together. Come here and listen for ways to become better. The only one you can change is you, and when you do that, everything around you changes by default. It may not be immediate, but it is definitely imminent, okay? So I'm either going to give you a subject or story time or both and some examples. Note, story time will never be a sentence. There will be details and they'll be relevant to the point. If your attention span is short, listen faster. Turn the playback to 1.25 or 1.5. I'm here to offer you a perspective you probably haven't considered. The objective in that is for you to consider another perspective or position, whether you agree with it or not. Too many people are lacking conflict resolution skills, and that's largely because they don't know how to hear someone else's point of view without feeling like they're conceding a victory. Hear what I'm telling you. Listening is not losing, friend, okay? I'm going to say that one more again. Listening is not losing. It is vital to basic communication. Basic communication, not great communication. So let's confirm that we have a strong foundation so that we can build on something solid. That said, if you're new here, we usually start our episodes with affirmations. Why? I want to set the tone. I want to make sure we're all tuned into a high frequency. You go to work in a good mood, even when somebody does or says something that rubs you wrong, you're able to maneuver way better than when you get there and you're already disturbed. The same applies here. If we start out making sure you're edified and shored up, we don't have to spend unnecessary time getting you patched up at the end if your feelings get hurt. Know that with everything I say and do, I lead with love. And if ever my intentions were to inflict harm, I tell you up front so you can govern yourself accordingly. Now that I've given you that rundown, let's raise these vibrations. Let's get on the same frequency. Let's get into a good place. If you're ready, go ahead, take a deep breath. You are always welcome to repeat after me or to take this time to state your own affirmations. I am present. I am excited to be here. I am grateful for the opportunity to grow. I am grateful for the opportunity to expand. I am grateful for progress and forward movement. I am unbound by the things that previously held me back. I am free from indolence. I am motivated. I am ready. I am well. It is well. All is well. Well is all. Bring forth the day. Ashe, ashe, ashe. Season 5, Passionates. 5 is the number for grace and favor. This is our season for grace, for favor. How'd you enjoy your summer? How'd you enjoy the summer content? You see, I brought back the producer and the editor as requested. And you also see why I have to leave them behind the scenes. But they will probably make some guest appearances throughout the season because they're part of the show. So why not let them get their shine? You got to see some of what I had going on behind the scenes. I delivered on bringing you additional content as promised. And as always, it is only up from here, beloveds. I listen to your feedback, okay? The rollout of the second pod is postponed, but it is happening, and a third is in development. In the meantime, we'll keep our attention on this season of this pod. Last season, we did a lot of building on the previous week, and we might do a little more of that this season, but maybe not from this specific week to next week. With every season premiere, I go through a tug of war deciding how I want to kick off this season. This season was started 3 times. I would catch a rhythm in writing and then I would redirect, as was the case with our intended episode. But I've been doing a lot of unintentional reflection recently. I was thinking about my productivity levels and what I've accomplished this year compared to the last few years. Like, where was I and what was I doing before I got to this space, when I entered this space, and now? I look back to 2019, and aside from some beautiful and much needed trips, it was pretty much go to work, come home, occasionally go out to eat, and maybe sing a little bit. Now, my schedule had a lot to do with that because I was working overnight at that time, so I was on a reverse schedule from the rest of the world. And for as long as I worked that schedule, I couldn't find something that provided me adequate rest, right? Add to that, my position was hanging in the balance because there were changes being made at my job. But once I moved to the new department and my schedule switched, I had more time on my hands that on first recall, I didn't really remember doing anything significant with. But reaching back in the archives, I realized I'd overlooked that 2019 was when my former partner and I were in the planning stages of the previous pod. We were working out logistics and getting things in order so that when we started, we could just run. Looking back, looking through old texts and emails, all of that showed me things that I don't even remember seeing at that time. It also made me realize how well prepared my partner was to really do this versus how unprepared I was. But for all their preparation and foundation laying, I'm the one still doing this, and they've moved on to other ventures. In comes 2020, and we're recording, which brings me into a space with multiple other creatives all doing entrepreneurial things. And while they may not be widely known, they're greatly valued and appreciated in the spaces in which they operate. Then here comes this plague that shuts the world down. Now, while a lot of people were locked away in their homes, I didn't have the job that allowed for that. So I was out of my house every day, but limited in the people I was in direct contact with. But the people I was connecting with virtually, they were on a different type of time. They were building businesses, they were estate planning, they were working on their spirituality, they were finding ways to invest in themselves, in their beliefs, in their goals. The ones that weren't saying much and the ones that were doing a whole lot of talking, everybody was doing something. And I was too, every day, intentionally. The things that I was looking to do before, some of them I couldn't do because the places just weren't open and that was that. But even in that, the unavailability helped me to redirect my attention to other things that were way more substantive and didn't require me to leave my house. My bro from work, he and I started talking a little bit deeper, and we found out that we were in the same group. We were listening to the same knowledge. We were tuned into the same frequency. He tells me he started following this individual and gained X knowledge. So I'm like, all right, well, let me go see what they're talking about. Now I'm gaining insight. I'm not quite ready to pull the trigger, but I know I need to. June 2021, I pulled the trigger. The business is established. Yay me. Okay. Remember, in January 2021, that's when we launched the previous pod. And then by February, I was on my own. Ooh, I was on my own. Why did it end that way? That wasn't how it was supposed to be. Girl, why you always gotta soundtrack everything? Be seen and not heard. Let that lady run her show how she wants to. But also, let's keep this brief. Attention spans and editing times. Thank you. Whether it was how I envisioned it or not, it worked out how it worked out. Places were opening back up and things to do were becoming available again, but those spaces and places weren't my priority. The people that I was talking to and engaging with, business builders, entrepreneurs, doers. People getting up, taking initiative, working quietly behind the scenes and getting things done. Now, were they running into brick walls and roadblocks? Absolutely. Were they crying bitter tears? Many days. Were they giving up or giving in? Not at all. End of the first pod, I wasn't ready to give up podcasting, but I was done with nurturing someone else's abandoned baby while simultaneously trying not to make it seem like I had just kidnapped the baby. I was tired of tiptoeing on eggshells and I was mentally drained. Behind the scenes, work was being done, conversations were being had. September 21, this pod launches. More access to more places is becoming available, but I'm focused. Stayed on it in 2022. Even when I was outside in Greece, I stayed on it. 2023, I decide I'm going to make a huge move. I'm still working on everything I've been working on, just not necessarily as active in all the spaces, right? So the pod is still going up on YouTube, but the clips aren't going up on IG or on TikTok. But the work is still being done. Now, summer season has been my downtime for the past 2 years, but this year, I ramp it up and I release 2 other shows. I'm still driven to do the things, build the empire, but I'm noticing that the urge to be in places I used to be has resurfaced. But when I'm in those places, I'm hyper aware of what I'm not accomplishing, what's not getting done, what's falling by the wayside of the people around me. Now, I can't say that when I was producing the most output is when I was surrounded by people that were the most like-minded. I know that sounds weird. Many will argue that that's when you'll really flourish and excel, but I challenge that. Depending on your personality type and your self-discipline, you might find that you're the most inspired and motivated in those circles, but you're the most productive when you're alone with nothing else to do and the options and distractions are eliminated. That's what I could say for myself. I felt the most supported and connected when I was in that group. Where you are and who you're moving with directly correlate to and impact where you're going next. People who complain about what they need or what they don't have while simultaneously wasting time doing things that won't get them what they need or want to have, while they can motivate you, and probably not in a positive way, because you may be looking at them like, that's exactly who I don't want to be, so let me do everything that they're not. While they can or are motivating you towards your betterment, eventually they may motivate you right on about the relationship because they're still groaning and lamenting about the circumstances you both had that you have actively changed. But if they don't ignite you to do better, little by little, they can intentionally or unintentionally lead you back to where you were before you started making moves toward better. When was the last time you audited your circle? When was the last time you audited your circle or your circles? How many circles do you have? How big are they? Are they nested like tree rings or overlapping like Venn diagrams? If you audited your circle recently, how many people have you assessed as needing to go and actually release them? How many have you assessed as needing to go, but you don't have the heart to throw them away? How many people are there because they pour into you, and do you equally pour into them? How many are draining you? How many places have you returned to since the world reopened, whether out of nostalgia or habit? Do those places support your growth? Do those places serve you for what you're doing now? Looking back, did they ever? They could be revealing how much growing you haven't done, how much you've devolved, or how rapidly you're regressing. These are some of the questions that if you haven't asked yourself, I suggest you start. Your running buddies from before you started doing the things, when you started doing the things, what did they do? Over the last few weeks, months, years, What growth do you see? And this is not for you to judge or condemn anyone for what they are or aren't doing, but it is imperative. If you know that you're actively and intentionally, as you should be, working toward a goal, to be aware of the people that have close or direct access to you. If they're not doing anything different, but they're not complaining about their circumstances, okay, because that'll evolve one way or another. They'll fade to black, or you'll move past where they can see you. We talked about that last season. But if X amount of time has passed and they're still complaining and still not doing anything, something got to give. And if you're going to keep them in your circle, you're going to have a hard conversation. But if you're going to return to the places where you were to do what you were doing before, just remember that directly or indirectly, those places will have an impact on what you're doing now. The environment has its own energy, and the people therein do as well. If you left one low vibrational environment and traded it for another, you probably won't notice a change. If you were in a high vibrational environment full of great energy and your energy has shifted, you'll notice that something is different, but it may take some time before you realize what's different is you. Now, can you be in a good personal energy space and have a good time in a space that's not a match for your energy? Sure. But the same way people can siphon your energy and drain your cup is the same way negativity can seep in while you're having a great time, and things you stop doing, you start doing again. Habits you've broken can start to have appeal again. Language you stopped using can start rolling right off the tongue. And the bicycle you thought you forgot how to ride, you're back on it and doing tricks. So let's wrap this up with some passion points, do some housekeeping and clear out so we can all reflect, process, apply, and then reconvene, okay? Passion point number 1, there's some credit you might not be giving yourself. You may feel like you haven't done or aren't currently doing enough. Research takes time. Learning takes time. Studying takes time. If you didn't get something right the first time, doing it over takes time. That call that was handled in 3 minutes but required 45 minutes of holding, time. There have been so many occasions when I felt like I've done nothing because I was dissatisfied with my output. But when I stopped and I thought about it, it really wasn't that I hadn't done anything. Some of the things that I had done required so much time, they didn't leave time for anything else to be scratched off the list. But those things were necessary as well. So when you're saying you didn't get anything done, it's possible that you haven't fully accounted for something that you did. All the research, all the study, the foundation laying in the world doesn't matter if your heart is not in it. My former partner and I embarked on this journey together, but I was on board as supporting cast, and I was comfortable to play that position. But after all the initial work was done, the only one that was really emotionally vested was me. I was all in, and they were backpedaling out months before we even launched. So if you started something and you find yourself wandering away from it or backsliding into the habits that you had before you commenced this course, ask yourself if your heart is still in it. If it isn't, ask yourself why. Is it because of the challenges? Is it because it's not at all what you thought it would be? Is it because you're just bored? Because that's a real thing too. But if the habits you're revisiting aren't habits that'll propel you in a healthy, productive direction, while you may not want to remain committed to what you're doing right now, ask yourself why stagnancy or regression seem like better options. Point number 3, if someone is doing the bulk of the work in a partnership, the other partner will be left at a deficit if the partnership is ever dissolved for any reason, if the one not doing isn't at least actively learning. So if you're not going to produce, you better at least gain some insight into how to, because if you're ever called on to do, you're going to be feeling and looking crazy trying to scramble to figure things out. Point number 4. If you measure success by what the world thinks of you, you may never be successful. If you measure success by how many of the things you've done that you wanted to accomplish, you'll realize you've always been a rock star. Perspective. I released an album, but it only sold like 200 copies. Perspective shift. I always wanted to make and release an album, and did. Now I know what goes into creating and releasing it. Now if I want to do another one, I can figure out how to market it so it's more widely released, received, regarded. Does that make sense? Because real talk, being a celebrity has its perks, but think about this. being a celebrity means your every move is being judged. And most of the people who are going to criticize and discredit you are failing at life. But because their failures aren't on a large screen for others to see, they'll never even graduate to mediocrity. Don't let people who ain't doing nothing make you feel like all the some things you're doing don't count. You keep doing. The example is the action, not the observation. I said something. Point number 5. Just because you like spending time with them doesn't mean that time is being well spent. Time is the most precious and valuable resource we have. Since we refer to time passed or shared as time spent, consider time as a form of currency. If you're not getting return on your investment, your currency is not being well used. Is it important to build and nurture relationships? Of course. But if the good times you're getting from these moments lead to delays and missed opportunities, which will then be viewed as bad times, is the trade-off worth what it costs? Moderation and balance, beloveds. And that's it, Passionists. I had a lot to say, and if you paid attention, you have a lot to process, so I'm going to leave you to it. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or commendations, drop them in the comments section, or just drop some megaphones if you got some value from this. Listener letters can be sent to greetings@whatonewomandoes.com. If you haven't done so already, give this a thumbs up, subscribe, turn on notifications, and share. Your views, likes, comments, subscriptions, and shares help the algorithm know that I'm here, and that helps me help others help themselves. If you would like to be a financial contributor, donations can be made via Linktree, Zelle, PayPal, or Podbean. Every little bit helps. It all goes back into the pod. That's it, and that's all, Passionates. You get you right, Guru is signing off. Y'all go forth. Be great, be filled with bliss, be armed and empowered with knowledge. Do a review and see if things are tracking. And if they're not, figure out what needs to change and change it. The time is now. In all things, be passionate. See you later.